Welcome to Grab Your Gear. This is Joe. It is Monday. A special Grab Your Gear today. We talked to Peter Mcilvenna he's over in Great Britain. He's been on this show before, but some of you may or may not know there's been a lot of unrest over in the UK. We wanted to bring Peter in because it's very important you understand. And this network of Grab Your Gear was created for initially the merit shops, the people that get up and go to work every day. It was a way to get you information that you need, information that you may not get in other places. And today is absolutely a part of our mission. This is an important story because many times what goes on around the country and around the world and then grows around the world eventually affects you. It's very important that you understand how information is being controlled sometimes, what potentially could happen to your Twitter feed, to your social media. That's what this show's about, and that's why we did it. So without further ado, I want to send it over to the interview I had earlier today with Peter Mcilvenna. Peter Mcilvenna joins us here on Grab Your Gear, political commentator, former politician, commentator, and man of God. Peter, how are you today? Talking to us from England.
All good. Quite hot here, so if I might be a bit sweaty. We're hitting the heights of global warming here in London.
Yeah.
But great to be with you, Joe.
Hey, I want to get right into this because I know you're doing a lot of interviews and going back to back, but it's been a series of riots in England. I want to set the stage a little bit, and if I'm wrong, I want you to correct me. But there was an incident with a group of little girls who were basically at a dance school or something like that, basically doing a Taylor Swift program or practicing. There was violence there. It was murder. It was initially reported that it was an immigrant. You can fill in some more details, but now you're facing unrest, which has led to monitoring not just social media, but intervening where law enforcement may anticipate a problem, anticipating a problem before there's a problem. You could be sharing a tweet. You could be talking to your neighbors via social media. You are now probably being monitored by law enforcement. I want to set the stage there and tell me where I'm wrong.
I don't think you need me. I think you've got it, Joe. It's
No.
Hang on. So it was 2 weeks ago today, and someone went in with a large knife and stabbed three young girls dead, 6, 8, and 9-year-olds, and severely injured six other people and injured a couple of others. So that was 2 weeks ago. This all kind of comes on the back of other stuff. So there was a massive demonstration, a massive rally in London on the Saturday, 2 days before that. So just over 2 weeks ago, where between 50 and 100,000 people came out, basically wanting our country back. So anger at mass immigration, anger at being left behind communities. So that happened. Then 2 days later, this stabbing happens, 3 girls murdered. And a lot of anger just spilled over. People utterly frustrated. First of all, you have the false information. At least we're told it's false. At this stage, I don't really know because the government are, of course, the gatekeepers for information. But we were told, no, it was a individual, 17-year-old, parents from Rwanda. Obviously, Rwanda, a Christian country, 55-60% Christian, not a Muslim country at all. But the rumor went out that this was an illegal immigrant that came over, and that fitted into the narrative of people's frustration at what they've seen. So that meant from Tuesday, so 2 weeks ago, you started having people coming out in solidarity, in support, in concern at what had happened in this stabbing on the back of the false information that we think is false that went out, that this was an illegal immigrant. And then that has spilled to become much bigger, with a lot of demonstrations across the country, a lot of riots across the country, a lot of vandalism across the country, a lot of kind of what you kind of might have seen on the far left. We had a kind of a week of this in the UK, with stuff getting burned down, some police being attacked, a lot of anger all across the country. that is quieting down, and is quieting down because the government have clamped down in a way that I've never seen before in my time. I'm 47 and I've never seen such a clamp down at all in regards to the ability to demonstrate, the ability to protest, and the ability to post online. So that kind of sets the scene. You were bang on, Joe, on the issue. As a Taylor Swift themed concert at a school, another Taylor Swift themed event. Obviously, Taylor Swift had to cancel three other concerts that she's got in Austria, which is a bit weird, that
Yeah.
connection. But yeah, it feeds into the concern that people are being left behind, people are being ignored, similar to in many parts of the US. That you've got a group of people who are ignored by the politicians, who are told to shut up and just do your duty as an American, vote every couple of years, and then keep quiet and let us run the government because we're smarter than you. That's kind of what we're seeing in the UK, and partially across Europe. And people said enough is enough. We're going to have Keir Starmer, a far left government, for 5 years, and we are going to be vocal about it and angry. So that's kind of where we are in the current situation. But I'll certainly talk about the restrictions on media, restrictions on gathering, and the totalitarian state in regards to how the courts have been used to silence protesters.
Okay, just one thing, Starmer, your new PM, the atheist. He's not a vegetarian. What was I call him? Apprentice Isabella, Presbyterian. Is that what they call him? Yeah, yeah. So he's an atheist Presbyterian married to a Jewish woman, raising the kids Jewish. What could go wrong in that household? We have the atheist dad leading the Jewish children. I'll leave that there, just because I don't want to get into it, but it just kind of sets the stage of where this guy's intellectual. Uh, and I say that also because England really is a class-based society, Peter, isn't it? I mean, it feels like a lot of times that there are protests, but there seems to be a lot of times an undertone of economic discontent, and then it's always a lot of times over in your country it's labeled, right wing. In France, a lot of the rioting tends to be left wing. It's celebrated there. Many leaders have emerged out of those protests, but you have this situation where to me it feels like you have a new PM. He's been there just over a month, and now it's kind of like the class reorganization of where things are. I wonder if people were protesting, and let's say they were protesting because of the economy and labor and jobs, unemployment, would it have the same feel as what they're trying to frame this as right now? And I bring it up because I think it's important that people understand there is a little bit of a difference in England. I mean, if you go back to the Who and the Beatles, they came from areas where protesting was like a hobby, right? I mean, people just did it kind of recreationally, but it has cranked up. And to your point, are they taking something that has been happening there in your country for a long time, and now are they using that to leverage it, and to leverage it against the classes, and to leverage it to silence people?
Well, you're 100% right. Britain is a class system. I never knew it until I um, haven't risen to the heights of the dizzy heights or the dizzy falls of being an elected politician, but have worked in the House of Lords for 12 years with Lord Pearson, one of Margaret Thatcher's last appointees. And I never understood the class system until I started working with him. And then I begun to see behind the curtain. And that's not something I experienced growing up in Northern Ireland, coming to England. But actually, you realize that it is the old boys network that runs everything. So 100%. And we are seeing the government we have the underlying concerns. This was the underlying concerns during the Brexit debate, behind. And we are seeing those concerns ramp up without a political outlet. That's the concern, because you want to look at where the solution's coming from. We have a church that is utterly on its knees in the
Yeah.
UK. A whole other conversation, and I know you're having the same crisis with many parts of the church in the US. You then look at a political solution, but actually there isn't really a political, and reform, which is under Nigel Farage, is doesn't really get the huge concerns with the British public. And Nigel Farage is certainly a lot better than what we've had before, but it's only 5 MPs out of 650. It's not going to change the UK, but he is a voice anyway. So then on the other side, um, you've got Tommy Robinson, who's become one of the most attacked people in the UK and one of the most celebrated people in the UK. And it's a weird mix. I was talking to a church leader this morning about this, and he called me for my assessment of what was happening. And you've got a lot of individuals that have risen up, reflect the concern that the lower middle class face about being left behind, and their anger at these career politicians that have never really worked a day in their lives. And that anger is spilling over, and it's part of the anger that was there during Brexit. And of course, we got Brexit, but Brexit in name only, really. We're outside the EU, but we still have massive controls, and we had to pay tens of billions for the permission to leave that club. Um, but so that's where we are at the moment. But then you've got the police using massive clampdowns that is, as I said at the beginning, I have never seen before. And they are now arresting people and jailing people in 48 hours. Now, we I'm involved in a legal case of a girl who was a victim of the grooming gangs, the Muslim rape gangs across the UK, and we are having to wait 5 to 6 months between court instances. 5 to 6 months. But hey, if you're targeted as a far right individual on Facebook, you can be thrown in a jail in 48 hours. That's where we are. We have got rapists being released from jail early, and child rapists only get 3.5 years, 3.5 years, and you're out after good behavior. We are getting murderers released after 6 months. And at the end of this month, there's going to be a mass release of up to 5,000 people from our jails to make room for all these far right agitators that have been imprisoned. And as much as I do not condone any violence, and I was not part of any, I did not participate in any, and I'd encourage people not to participate in it because I don't think that's the way forward. Yet there are underlying concerns of people and they're not being addressed. So we now have a government that says we will come for you. I saw a police video this morning, and the police officer in 2 minutes said 4 times, "We are coming for you." Very threatening language that we have never had in the UK, and we police by consent. So the public consent to that police. It's not police by force. It's not in the US where all our police have guns, and if you don't like it, you'll suffer at the end of a gun. We actually have police by consent. That is disappearing very fast, and we are seeing the police arrest people, knocking down people's doors for Facebook posts and putting people in jail for 2 years for saying things online. The government have now said they can put people in jail for 10 years for any involvement. And involvement means reposting a picture, reposting a video without any statement. The head of public prosecutions has said, then if you repost anything that they deem to be participating in these riots, then you will be arrested. We've had 800 people so far arrested, and it is full on Stasi. It is full on going around, rounding people up because they dislike their views instead of addressing the underlying theme. And we've got this for the next 4.5 years. And the only opposition to our far left government is Elon Musk. He is literally the only opposition. And he's had a massive spat with our Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. And he has fully gone to war against Keir Starmer on the issue of free speech and reporting news. And it is, he was told by Keir Starmer to stop posting. So what does Elon Musk do?
Yeah.
He triples up the posting, triples up. And he is literally the one defense, the one opposition we have against our far left government. So that's where we currently are in the UK.
Now, the problem is, just so people understand, you don't really have our version of the First Amendment here in the United States, right? So there have been speech laws and anti-hate laws in the UK for a while. I mean, that's nothing new, correct?
We have
But
had it. Well, Margaret Thatcher brought in hate speech legislation, actually, but it was never used to the extent we've seen it being used.
right.
With the rise of Twitter, that has now been used, and the police are policing Twitter as opposed to policing burglaries and rape.
Okay, so that sets the stage, but the excessiveness is my point. You've had rules and kind of a infrastructure, but nobody was like following you around and throwing you in jail. the moment you said something. So what you have though, and this is where I think this is scary, and this is where everybody in the United States should listen to this. And here on Grab Your Gear, that's one of the things we want to do is just get to the truth of this thing. The truth is the government becomes the arbiter of truth and fact, right? So you have the government decides what is misinformation. So they're defining a government's now defining truth versus the people or the people who control government. So they have to explain this to people why or why not they may be committing a crime. I mean, the odds are the standards are not going to be evenly applied to the right and left under this scenario. But the other situation is once you start to do this, that means if the other side takes control, you can weaponize the same thing. I mean, this opens a bungle of problems that could be used by anybody going forward. It's hard to roll that crater back up the hill at some point. And I guess the only thing it reminded me of the protest here when people during COVID in the United States went out and protested when they could not attend family funerals or to see their loved ones in the hospital. And they were, threatened with arrest. But then George Floyd protests were allowed. And this is what it's kind of reminded me that it might be setting the stage for.
It is, and we are having two-tier policing, and this is one of the lines, two-tier care. Hashtag two-tier care for two-tier policing, referencing Keir Starmer. And Elon Musk has reposted that hashtag numerous times. And we are seeing this discrepancy, and that's what makes people even more angry. We're seeing people, the grooming gangs, the rape gangs, we are seeing the police collapse those trials so those individuals don't go to jail, protecting the rapists while sending people into jail for their anger at what is happening to them as a community. And it's a weird balance because I'm not condoning violence. I don't think that's the way forward. Um, I'm not kind of French revolutionist. That's not where I'm going. I think you have to work within the system. And as a Christian, that's also what I mean. You have to work within the system. You pray for your leaders, and you do what you can do within those confines that we find ourselves in. And God will give us wisdom on how to live and work within those confines. But I understand that anger, and I understand the concern whenever the police see the Antifa demonstrations that we've seen, whenever they see Muslims running around with machetes, the Muslim Defense League threatening anyone that comes near their mosque. And the government don't seem to respond. Whenever you have a Labour politician saying he'll slit the throat of every Nazi who comes and attacks them, and that was only reported because the alternative media filmed it and reported the police numerous times. The police were forced to arrest that Labour politician. So we have the role of the alternative media, and what the government are moving towards is shutting that down. They're moving towards bringing restrictions in on social media. They've threatened to extradite foreigners for posting online. So Elon Musk is on notice that actually the British government may want to extradite him for his crimes of reposting, to which he could be liable to a 10-year jail sentence. Um, uh, it's you sit back and you think, how has this happened, and what is the pushback, and what is the way forward, and how do you take that anger out and actually work with it productively to actually regain control of where we are? And that's a difficult question. And obviously, as you, Joe, know in the space of media, it's about putting information out and not ramping up that fear, but actually trying to provide a solution. And that's quite difficult. But whenever you've got Elon Musk reposting all this, whenever you got Jordan Peterson reposting a lot of it, whenever suddenly it becomes international and people see the dearth of accountability in the UK, and they see the two-tier policing by the videos that go everywhere, and the government are seeking to control this conversation on social media because they want the conversation to only come from our mainstream media, our legacy media, and this whole alternative media setup that we now have through the internet, and really thanks to Elon Musk that's turbocharged it. This puts fear into our government in the UK, and will put fear into every government because they want to be the gatekeepers of information, and being the gatekeeper means you control the media. They no longer have control of the media, and they want to restrict it, just like you have in many parts of the world where people have to use VPNs to actually get around it. We are facing the same level of tyranny and authoritarianism and control in the UK.
You have a situation where they're labeling this nationalist. I believe they call these rioters nationalists. Is that how they're tagging them?
Well, far right's the term. Generally, far right's
Okay,
the term.
far right. All right. So I'm looking at a report of the Daily Telegraph today, less than 4 hours ago. This was released. You have the highest number of migrants crossing the channel in a single day since your atheist PM Starmer became PM. So, I mean, just look at what is going on, but look at the reality of what is happening around you. You're arresting people for what they're saying. They're out of line. The government's becoming the arbiter. Meanwhile, look at the math. The math tells me what some of these people may be upset over, and that is massive migration. The United States has the same issue. It has been the number one issue during this election, but look around you. So in the meanwhile, uh, that's happening, and people are being monitored. If you're on the ground and you're just in your neighborhood, you're not allowed to. I mean, Peter, if you're in your neighborhood and there's a riot across the street, you want to post something out, hey, there's a riot across the street. If someone just interprets that as incitement, you can be arrested. I mean, that's what I'm trying to gauge the whole environment. You have this mass migration going on. Meanwhile, we're going to limit what you can say about, protesting in the streets. It's you are in a twilight zone.
So the bar is even lower than that, Joe. I'm sorry to reduce
Oh,
it down to further in the gutter. It's not
same
that if
way.
someone actually says you're inciting, which is the online safety bill, and it's exactly the same in Europe, and I think COSA is the legislation you're facing in the States.
Yeah.
All the same, all the same. And if anyone somewhere is offended, somewhere part of the world, then that is enough. So offended, perplexed, perturbed, whatever, then that is enough. What the director of public prosecutions in the UK said a couple of days ago reduces the bar down to the ground completely. What he said was, if you repost the information going round, then you are liable to be arrested and prosecuted. So it's not that anyone has found offence. It is simply, if you are reporting the news, then you will be arrested. That's literally what it means. It is full control of the information. If you retweet, it's not if you retweet something that's incorrect. If you retweet anything about what is happening, you could face prison time. And that means the government want to take back control of the news, but they can't because it's out there. It's called the internet. You can't really turn it back, but they're trying to do that.
the What I see is they're trying to, and I'm saying extreme left progressive movement that is a global movement now. And if you don't think it's a global movement, you're not paying attention. It seems they were trying to replace the news with an approved narrative. They're trying to replace facts with a narrative. Is that accurate?
Oh yeah. Facts don't matter anymore, and we've had subjective truth for many years. And now the truth is what the government say. And we had Jacinda Ardern in New Zealand, and she said, "We will tell you what is correct. We will tell you the facts." That was during COVID, and we are seeing that used now. The government will tell you what is right and wrong. Will tell, but again, none of us know what the rules are. Literally, in the last 10 days, none of us in media know what the rules mean anymore because the police are arresting people. Tommy Robinson was arrested under terrorist legislation 2 weeks ago and held for 12 hours as a terrorist and then was released with no charges. The reason they arrested him, the reason they have the terrorism legislation they brought in is because you have no right to legal advice initially. Secondly, you must answer every question. You have no right to silence. And thirdly, you must give all your electronic devices over with all your passwords and PIN codes. That's why they introduced that legislation. He was arrested and they told him, look, we know you're not a terrorist, but we're using this legislation. And whenever the government have those powers at their disposal, which means you've got zero pushback as a citizen, we're screwed. That's all I can say at the moment. That's the current situation, and until we come up with a idea of how to fight this, we are in a little bit of a pickle, as they would say.
Yeah, Peter Mcilvenna joining us here on Grab Your Gear, talking about the situation in England and really some of these consequences may flow over to the U.S. Peter, Americans, if you're an American in the UK, you're subject to their laws, right?
Yes.
So
Yep.
you could be arresting Americans over there.
Oh, they could be putting an extradition warrant for Elon Musk. They literally the government is full on psycho. They really are, because there's panic that this will destabilize the UK government. And Labour have waited 14 years to get into power, so they're going to use every lever they can. But yet, this is not just a UK issue. This clampdown that we are seeing in the UK will canon will be rolled out elsewhere, because the UK government will tell other governments, will tell Sleepy Joe, actually, this is how you control. This is the legislation we're using, and we have got concern that these riots may spread to the US. That then gives carte blanche to your government to do something. And I think we will see this rolled out elsewhere. We've already seen Australia last week. They're passing a bill through the Australian Parliament that anyone who goes online must give their ID, and then they go online, and that's obviously to roll out digital ID. We are seeing a full control in what we do, what we look at, what we say, what we think, how we spend our money, everything the government wants to have control and a say over. And that's where we're moving in this conversation online. They want to massively restrict, but this is not a UK issue. And to your UK audience, or to your US audience, this will come because the UK government will frame this as a solution to extremism. And what they're doing, putting hundreds and hundreds of people in jail in 48 hours, they will put that as an example of how you can tackle extremism in your country.
Just so you, extremism is going to be equal people on the right, conservatives.
Patriotism.
Yeah.
Patriotism is extremism. Yeah.
So they call it nationalism, and they try to make that a bad word now. And when I say they, it's also the people. What you just described, though, of trying to, in essence, limit speech aggressively or mildly, we call it the Twitter files over here. It's what Matt Taibbi and Schellenberger did, and Barry Weiss. It was the same thing. It was a cooperation with the government, with social media platforms to control speech. Sorry to
And
get you
we're
between your swig there.
and but no, it is. But I again, the difficulty is when you're in the media space, you put out information, and then you wait to allow the government or law enforcement to act upon it. We are not in a position of running courts or sending the police over. That has to be at a governmental level, and for all my lifetime, that's kind of how it's worked. The media have exposed something, and then it's forced the government to act.
Yeah.
With the Twitter files, I haven't seen that. I've seen great exposés on what had happened, and the establishment, the system nod. They say awful, and then life goes on. Yet it's the J6ers, or it's those actually who seem to be nationalists or seem to be patriots. It is those who get hit. So it is a two-tier system across the board. But how do you actually force the hand of the state to act on the information they're given if they literally do not care? And that's what you've seen under this Biden regime, that literally they don't care, and whatever information you give, they will ignore because they're not interested. That's a dangerous situation to be in. And obviously you've got November elections coming up, and that could be one impasse to that. But in the UK and Europe, we've also got that impasse, and the government refused to act on information. There's not a lot you can do about it.
Peter Mcilvenna, we have to wrap up here in a minute, but I want to ask you a question because he's kind of important in America. How important is Elon Musk right now to the UK?
he is essential, and I've got massive issues with Musk being a globalist with Neuralink, and many other parts with the rollout of AI, with Grok on Twitter. Have got lots of concerns, and I having self-driving cars that can be turned off at a moment. Actually, this is so. Give me a key with actually a proper key that I can stick in the side and turn. That's what you want to actually take away from this digitization and control. So I've got massive issues, but I do think that he will be known and remembered as the person who gave free speech. I think it'll be less Starlink, it'll be less Tesla, I think it'll be less the boring machine. I think actually he will be known as the person who stepped in and tried to give free speech back to the internet once again. And he is essential. And I mean, if you've got the richest man on your side, on the side of patriots in the UK, this is now a fight. This is now a proper fight. It's no longer David and Goliath, because individually we can't go up against the government. But actually, Elon Musk comes into the ring, and you think, "Uh-oh, he's mine. Okay, I'll step back and let him do his thing." So he is essential, and we have a conservative government, conservative in name only. Tory government that are not conservative at all and have destroyed this country over the last 14 years. We have zero opposition to the far left and Labour. Then Elon Musk steps in and he seems to be providing that opposition. And it's curious where God sends relief from. But it seems in this occasion, Elon Musk is part of that relief for the UK. So he is essential to our fight back against this tyranny.
You know, it's interesting. He is recording this on Monday morning. It'll go up Monday. He's interviewing Donald Trump today.
Hmm.
Elon Musk is actually going to conduct an interview with Donald Trump.
And I hope you don't put this out so it clashes with that, because I wouldn't want people to miss this and just head over to that. But it is, and that's about bringing. One is about bringing President Trump back to Twitter, which is the space. I
Yeah.
mean, truth is wonderful, but actually Twitter is the game in town, and you need to be on that. And that's going to be streamed on Trump's Twitter account. And I watched the interview with Elon and Jordan Peterson. It was more Jordan interviewing Jordan, but that's kind of
Yeah.
what Jordan does sometimes, and you get some stuff out of it. But it was intriguing hearing from Musk, and I'm looking forward to watching Musk's interview with Trump. They're both fantastic, fantastically interesting characters in every regard, hugely successful in their fields. And both of them have stepped into arena that would be probably unwise. One has stepped in the arena of social media, of media. The other one has stepped in the arena of politics. And they've been hugely successful in that. So these are two giants that actually we want to learn from their mistakes and their successes. But that's going to be a phenomenal interview. I don't think we've seen anything like it before. But yeah, it's a must watch. And with Trump coming back onto Twitter, it's like you're rubbing your hands and thinking, well, what's going to happen over the next couple of months stateside? And my eyes are on it.
Well, they'll probably try to restart the Stanford Observatory, which was kind of one of the victims of the Twitter files, but they just started another one. I
Yeah.
mean, they did close it. But just to kind of recap, major unrest in England over the last 2 weeks that has settled down now, mostly under the threat of people being identified as for lack of a better term, creating unrest, kind of hooligans, I guess, online. And if you are caught doing that, sharing information that the government does deem to be uh, causing unrest or could lead to unrest, there was a film here in the United States called The Minority Report, which was all about Tom Cruise going around and intercepting people who were thinking about committing a crime. And you can't help but to think about that now. And what we've talked about, they are using tools in the UK to limit speech, to stifle speech, to declare what is hate speech and what is free speech, which technically they do not have a First Amendment in the UK, but we've never seen it to this extreme. Something we're going to watch. You know, Peter, last thing before you go, the labels they throw on people and then the techniques they use is fascinating. And I kind of see the same thing here. When the Canadian truckers were protesting, they were immediately labeled right wing, and those truckers were not right wing truckers. They were people trying to make a living. But that's where we got debanking, where we started to go after people's bank accounts, and that's what kind of concerns me when I hear this story. Is what will be next, because this isn't the beginning, middle, and end. This is the beginning.
You're right, and I think it's the financial side that is huge, and obviously CBDCs are moving towards that, restricting. We've had lots of high-profile people being debanked in the UK, and if you cannot access a bank account in the UK, then obviously you can't get paid for work you do.
Yeah.
And to me, that's even more concerning if the government go down that line, and I think they will because the gloves are off, and they want to silence any dissent. And I think it is down the financial route that they will restrict people's access to financial products. And once you get kicked off one, then that will massively affect your credit record. And then you can't just walk up to another bank and get another bank account necessarily. And I've heard, I mean, Nigel Farage had 5, 6 accounts shut down, one after the other. And that was a targeted attack on him. And I can see this being used as well. We haven't heard about it yet, but it has been used in the past, and I could see this being the next step to the government's plan to silence people, and that does strike fear. Getting your Twitter account taken down, that's maybe one thing. Actually, if you are arrested, that's another thing and questioned. Actually, if you get your bank account taken away and you can actually get money in from your work to feed your family, that is a direct attack on the family unit, and that's, I think, where we will be heading, not only the UK, but that power is available to every government worldwide. But I think that's where we're moving towards.
Um, you broke a bunch of laws probably just doing this interview today in the UK.
Hey Joe, always good to come on with you, and I'll blame you. Don't worry, I'll blame you.
Oh yeah, I mean, but in seriousness, you could be accused of uh, inciting a global movement and misrepresenting what's happening in the UK. I mean, you could be accused of that by someone who's going to make the rules up as they go. You worried about it?
I could be, and no, I'm not. I think and to this, I say as a Christian that you do what you believe is right, and you believe God's got your back. So you go into things, and you know that actually there is a bigger plan. It's not just about us individually, but actually we have a role to play, and we do what we do because that's where God has placed us. And if we don't choose where we go, we don't choose the connections, we don't choose the influence, but actually just go for it. And it's not as if we know what the rules are. And I haven't changed how I see things. I'm still using wisdom and logic to how I do things, and I want to report what is correct. And the danger sometimes with Twitter that you post stuff and I think actually that was wrong. Okay, I'll take it down, and you had to be able to do that. But you do what you believe is right, and that authority does not come from the British government, does not come from the US government, but comes from God.
Peter Mcilvenna, best of luck to you. We're going to stay in touch with you, especially at this period of time, because we watch what happens in the UK. We'll see what happens in the US. I want to encourage everybody to listen to the Trump Elon Musk interview. I have a feeling they may talk about what's going on in the UK on that. Peter, be safe. Thanks for taking time. I know you're on a tight schedule, and I appreciate you making time for us here on Grab Your Gear.
Anytime, Joe. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks. And thank you for joining us on Grab Your Gear. More information on this as we can collect it. Everybody keep Peter in your prayers. And in the meantime, we'll catch you next time back here on Grab Your Gear. For Joe, Apprentice Isabella, take care, and we will be in touch. If you want to get in touch with us, if you have information, stories you need to know, stories you'd like us to investigate, don't forget just to reach out to Dick at grabyourgear.net. Let him know what you're interested in. We will follow up. In the meantime, have a great day, everybody.